There's a plethora of custom katana shops online, with most of them based in China and little on their websites to differentiate them from each other. How's one to choose? That's the question I'm investigating in this video, the fourth in my series about custom Japanese swords. Hello, this is Kyle, also known as AlienTube, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a custom katana from JKOO Sinosword. Real quick before I begin, please forgive me if I mispronounce any Japanese words. Let's start this review by looking at the purchasing experience. I ordered this katana via JKOO's website, selecting the various options for the sword via their drop-down menus. It's a fairly painless process, although some of the pictures of the koshirae are small and blurry enough that it's hard to tell exactly what you'll be getting. Unlike some of the other custom katana sites, with JKOO you don't get a price until you submit the request, and then they email you back a quote, followed by a PayPal invoice if you agree to the purchase. They quoted me $310 for this sword and $54 shipping. My order was placed in July of 2021, and JKOO fulfilled it 3 months later. The katana I received was problematic is probably the most diplomatic word. The tip was bent, the saya was extremely loose, and there was a rather large gap in the fit of the habaki to the mune. I contacted JKOO about these flaws, and they said they'd make me a new katana if I sent the defective one back to them. I was concerned about that requirement because from everything I've heard, shipping swords into China is all but impossible. I brought this up with JKOO along with a quote for shipping the sword, and they replied by simply refunding me the amount of the shipping cost. I sent the katana as they requested, and received the replacement in January of 2022. Incidentally, I was right about the one sent back. It's still stuck in customs. Moving on to the sword and its parts, I'll start with the saya. It's got an attractive look with the natural wood grain and buffalo horn fittings, although the lacquer or finish they put on the wood seems to be rubbing off in some places. I can also feel the seam on both the top and bottom of the saya. The fit here is better than the first katana I received, but it's still not good. If I put the sword all the way into the saya, it's really hard to get it back out. The ledge on the habaki seems to be sticking. This can probably be fixed with a bit of filing, and I'll be doing that soon. Looking into the koiguchi, the shaping and finish here is not very good either. The wood is scraped up and not evenly fit. Next, let's take a look at the hilt. The ito is a brown cotton that is quite comfortable. The diamonds are pretty evenly formed, and the wrap alternates as it should, and it's nice and tight. There's very little movement. Unlike my Swords of Northshire katana, the knot is tied on the correct side, and while it could be a little more refined and less bulky, it's not bad. The tsuka's shape is slightly hourglassed, which is a nice touch that I really like in a katana. Plenty of less, and some considerably more expensive katanas have a simple shape with no real dimension, so adding a little subtlety is great, and it makes it more fun to look at and handle. Under the ito, the minuki are bamboo themed to match the other koshirae, and from what I can see, the casting quality is pretty rough. It's obvious the molds have been used a whole lot, and not much attention was given to refining the minuki. The samegawa panels seem to be made of decent enough quality. Obviously there's not going to be any large nodules, but it's clearly real ray skin, and there's enough variety to give some depth. The kashira and fuchi are both bamboo themed, and the casting quality here is similar to the minuki. Pretty middling quality, with some spurs left over that really should have been cleaned up, like this one here. The ito wrap doesn't quite line up with the kashira, producing small ledges on both sides. Now I didn't notice them when using the sword, although I imagine somebody who used this katana extensively for iaido might. There aren't any ledges at the fuchi, but there's something else problematic there. After just one session of cutting, it's come loose. This looseness is pretty minor, and it was hard to capture on camera, with the easiest way I found being to press on it from either side. You can hear it clicking as it moves around. I consider this unacceptable. I don't think fittings should come loose after cutting a few dozen water bottles, and it really makes me question the overall fit and finish of the tsuka. If I continue cutting with this sword, is it going to get worse and require a whole new tsuka carved far before it should? I think it's entirely possible, which discourages me from using it going forward. By the way, I did send an email to JKOO asking about this, but they haven't replied to me. The tsuba continues the bamboo theme. In fact, I believe all of the koshirae are direct copies of the Hanwei bamboo mat katana, with less attention to fit and finish. The casting quality here is considerably better than that of the other koshirae, and it's nicely fitted without any wiggle. I don't notice any hot spots when I choke up on the handle, and overall I like the tsuba. It does seem like whatever they used to give it the black finish is already wearing off in places, however. The habaki mimics a two-piece habaki, but it's actually just one piece of metal with what I assume is a copper paint to give it the two-tone look. I like the raindrop design, and the fit to the blade is decent without being great. It's certainly better than the sword I sent back though. Moving on to the business end, the blade. Here's the measurements I took. You'll probably notice that this is a longer katana at 30 inches. I wanted a longer blade to see if I'd like it, as most of the katana I've used have been around 28 inches. JKOO hit the length exactly. I also requested an okazaki, and while it does appear to be a bit longer than is normal, it's definitely shorter than I was expecting. The blade is T10, differentially hardened, with a real hamon. I requested a saguha style, which as I understand it should be a simple straight line. I received something that is mostly straight, but with little peaks here and there, and a lot of muddiness near the habaki on one side. I think it's also reverse polished. That is, the hamon is mirror polished instead of a milky satin, with the G instead polished to that milky look. Looking down the length of the blade, I don't really see any rippling, and the lines of the bohi are nicely crisp and well defined. The blade has a decent amount of niku without being a dotanuki, that is, a heavy-duty cutting sword. The yokote is geometric as requested, with the shape of the sword noticeably changing at that line. The line itself is muddled and not well defined, however, and the polish of the kazaki doesn't appear to be any different than the rest of the blade. Handling-wise, the katana balances at 5 inches from the munemache. This gives it a good authority in the cut while still feeling agile and well balanced. It also produces audible tachikaze. The best way I was able to capture the sound is this rather dull video angle. Bear with me for just a moment. Let's move on to test cutting. There's a few cuts in here by a friend of mine who, before this cutting session, had never handled the sword before. The JKOO katana cut with aplomb, and the only caveat I have here is that the polish took more scratches and scuffs than any other sword I've used. These are to be expected when cutting, but I was surprised at just how many this one took. So now it's time to talk bottom line. This katana cost me $310. Was it worth the price? And how does it compare to the other katana I've had? Well, I've got mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, this has been one of the best cutters I've used, making incredibly short work of every target put in front of it. On the other hand, the fuchi has come loose, the casting quality on the koshirae is not good, and the saya is going to require some filing to actually be useful. At $310, this is the priciest katana I've owned, and I don't think it's the best one. My Huawei is better in just about every way, but buying one of those has its own host of problems, especially if you're looking for anything custom. Comparing it instead to the Swords of Northshire and Ryujin katana I've reviewed, I think it's relatively even to the Swords of Northshire. Both have some problems that make me hesitant to use them, but they also cut well. I think the Ryujin is better than this JKOO, however, and at a lower price. You get less customization options with Ryujin, but the fit and finish seems to be a bit better. So that was a long-winded way of saying that no, I don't think the sword was worth the price. I don't place a high value on the extensive customization options that JKOO provides, since the vast majority of those options are garish and unattractive to my tastes. That leaves me with the basics, and for $310, I expect the sword to withstand cutting a few dozen water bottles without any loosening of the koshirae. At this point, out of Swords of Northshire, JKOO Sinosword, and Ryujin, I think Ryujin has the best deal on custom katana, being perfectly cromulent swords at a hard-to-beat price. I still have several more custom shops to review, however, and the next one will be from Hanban Forge. That's coming in the next couple of months. Stay tuned. But for now, that's all for this review. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Alien Dude out.